Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Now to talk a little bit about some Arkansas State politics. We have Senator Scott Flippo from North Central Arkansas. Scott, welcome back, sir.
Paul, thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you all.
Yes, sir. I'm always glad to have you on and talk, big picture conservative ideas. But I do want to.
Big picture, small picture, state issues.
Yes, we can do it all. But I want to start by just getting your comments on the biggest news I feel like of the week, which was we have Senator Jake Files mentioned in a sworn FBI affidavit that he took general improvement money and pocketed himself and forged bids on all this. I've called for him to resign. What are your thoughts on him continuing to stay in office?
Well, I think that needs to be a conversation that Senator Files has with the people that elected him. You know, one thing I will say, I've not visited with Senator Files since we adjourned the session. I don't want to say anything publicly, which I have not spoken to him personally about, but I will say anybody that's abused their position for their own personal gain needs to be held accountable. You know, one of my problems is that there's good people down in Little Rock that are down there for the right reasons. And, you know, if somebody does something unethical or illegal, it reflects upon us all. And it lessens our credibility when we go back and visit with our constituents and speak to them, especially as a conservative, about the need for sacrifice or less money or spending cuts. You know, that's a very difficult message to sell, you know, when they turn around and open the paper and see people pocketing, you know, money for their own gain, especially if it's taxpayer money. You know, again, I only know what I read about in the paper, just like anybody else. I've not had any conversations with Senator Files about this. From what I read, you know, he's in a difficult situation. And, you know, at the end of the day, as an elected official, we have to uphold the public trust. And when that is diminished, you know, it reflects upon us all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he even said in one of his statements that was defending this, he thinks he's going to be cleared, quote, of any appearance of wrongdoing. And, you know, at this point, how can you ever be cleared of appearance of wrongdoing, even if you were ever miraculously found not guilty, for doing what you did? I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, let me ask you this, Scott. I think you guys should be held to a higher standard. Do you agree? I
agree. No, absolutely. Listen, if we're passing laws for other people to live by, and we're doing things, and we're spending the taxpayers' money, there is a level of trust that goes in with that. And so when you run for public office, I do think that you put yourself in a position where, you know, you're in a position of power and influence. And if you abuse that or misuse that, you know, there needs to be accountability there. Now, you've got, you know, certainly the FBI is involved, and you've got the state's attorney that's going to have to look at this, and a grand jury. And I do believe in due process, but I also believe in justice. And, you know, if people got the short end of the stick, if they were wronged, if the taxpayers were wronged, there absolutely needs to be accountability. And, there's on either side of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, anybody. When you go down there, you're down there to serve the people. Now, that doesn't mean that people are going to agree with you, but these should be honest disagreements and not be about serving yourself. And so that's something that I try to hold a standard that I work to hold myself to. I know a lot of my colleagues do the same. Senator Files, I know what I've read about in the papers. I've not visited with him personally. But he's got some conversations that he needs to be having with his constituents, the people that elected him. But obviously, we know we all make decisions that affect, the entirety of our state. And so I understand that. And I understand that people are upset because this is not the first time that, the possibility of a corrupt legislator has come up. And, there might be, and there's a possibility that there'll be more things moving forward. So people are tired of hearing about it. Probably nobody more so than I am, because I'm actually want to talk about change and about, doing what we can to right the ship, to bring about conservative change, a conservative government, transparency. And these are things that are important to me, to the people that I represent, and I think to the people of this state. And so when things pop up like this that, kind of deviate us from those topics, it's frustrating, because this is not what I'm about, and this is not what I went to Little Rock for.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Senator Scott Flippo from Senate District 17 in North Central Arkansas. I want to shift gears now because we have been talking about Jake Files for several days now. And I'm by no means, ladies and gentlemen, through, but I want to shine a light on something. I read this story by Michael Wickline, 8 companies bid to aid state study. I covered it briefly on Monday. And this is just tell us a little bit about this, because you're a chair of this subcommittee that's trying to review how contracts are procured, the whole procurement process. Tell us about that.
Correct. So, one of my colleagues, Senator Hickey, has sponsored legislation during the session this year, specifically dealing with our procurement process and some of the things that need to be addressed. And what we're doing is we're reaching out to consultants that have, a background in this type of work, and looking at other states and what they're doing, because as a co-chair, I've become aware of things in our process.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to the program. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. And if you want to help us out, contribute to the program, feel free. The phone number to call us or text us, 870-275-9799. Hey, got a special treat I want to welcome to the program for the first time. We have the sheriff on the line from Washington County. Sheriff Tim Helder is with us. Tim, welcome to the program, sir.
Hi, Paul. Thanks.
I'm glad that you could join us today, because I've been following a few articles over the last couple of months about the Washington County Sheriff's Office and the 287G program, which is a partnership between local law enforcement and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. What can you tell us about Washington County and what you guys are doing in that partnership right now?
Well, we've been in this relationship for about 10 years now. And just to give you a little bit of history lesson as far as Washington County Sheriff's Office is concerned, it was kind of a hot-button issue 12, 13 years ago pertaining to illegal immigration into our area. And the 287G program became available. And, I thought this is a good compromise, at least in my mind, that perhaps we didn't have to go so far as to do workplace enforcement sweeps, but if we were able to identify people that were living here illegally and committing crimes, whether misdemeanor or felony, then perhaps those folks needed to be identified and removed from our community. So we entered into that agreement, and we remain so today, and I think it's been fairly effective.
What's interesting to me, Tim, is Sheriff Helder, is you said you've been in a part of this agreement for 10 years, and yet it's now making the news. I mean, you Google your name and Washington County Sheriff, and you can see under Google News just a lot of people are all of a sudden concerned about your partnership with the federal government. I mean, on this, what's changed if it's been an old agreement?
Well, I mean, all I can give you is my opinion, and but I think you might share it. Is that since a Democrat was in the Oval Office for the last 8 years, I think things were, going along pretty smoothly in the eyes of social justice and thing, at least in some people's view. Well, then, whenever President Trump took over, of course, there was a lot of talk about immigration, building walls, getting tougher, and I think that by and large, people are afraid of losing some of the ground they've gained over the last 8 years. And, that's just my opinion. And because for 10 years we've been doing this, and we basically have had, 3 or 4 of these steering committee meetings that was attended by about 50 people, 60 people a couple weeks ago. We've never had anybody in attendance prior to that. So I think it's a fair correlation, I think.
Well, it kind of seems it's a little, kind of a contrived response if this has been going on for a while. And I think you're right. I think it is Donald Trump being in the White House, a change in party. And what's interesting to me, and I had this sent to me, Sheriff Helder, from the Democratic last Democratic meeting. Now, you are yourself, you ran for sheriff and were elected as a Democrat, correct?
Yes, in 2004.
2004. So I have a slide from the Democratic Party committee meeting. I think it was in Washington County. It was sent to me, and they're criticizing you. I've got it up on the screen here for our online audience. Helder says our fight against 287G is just because we don't like President Trump. So that's what I was just saying. And then Helder says he's actually protecting immigrants by participating in 287G. Address that. But here's this last part. I think this is shameless. Helder says he is deporting dangerous people, but most are like the woman he left in a jail cell for 4 days with no food or water. Her crime was selling pirated DVDs. Can you address some of these claims? Or, I mean, is there any validity to that at all?
Well, there's validity that they had a meeting. I wasn't there, and so I don't know exactly what was said. Obviously, the majority of folks that are impassioned about this would probably be on the Democratic side of things. So I'm not real popular right now. But it all boils down, Paul, in my mind, to doing the right thing. And I know that people would argue, well, what's the right thing when it comes to human beings? But the problem is I just have trouble trying to decide which laws to enforce and which ones not to. And I think by and large, I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I think it's very clear what the Constitution says about this issue. And I don't know. I don't think that we're going way out of our way to damage people. I think that we're effectively screening every person that comes through our jail to determine if they are here legally or not. And at that point, we don't deport them. What we do basically is notify immigration, and then they make the final determination as to whether that status is in need of review, and then, of course, whether they want to put a detainer on them. So as far as, you want me to go down the list you gave me?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I mean, you can address that if you want. Yeah, what is that all about? I mean, what are they? And especially, by the way, I mean, if you're selling pirated DVDs, I mean, then don't you want to enforce that law? Just like you said, I mean, you have a problem with this concept of enforcing some laws and not enforcing others. And I just want to say, first of all, what you just said there, I agree with totally. That hey, look, you're a law enforcement officer, and you want to. You want to apply the law the way it's written, and I respect that. I think our entire audience appreciates that as well.
Well, I appreciate that. It's just that I'm probably more of a law enforcement administrator than I'm a politician, and what I mean by that is I don't counsel my dispatchers and my jailers and my deputies to ask people, what party they're in. I think that I'm elected to serve everybody, and this, to me, if it's a compromise, okay. But what it meant to me and what I meant to say, and I think I said it accurately, my words have been misconstrued, but it was this, that at least the people that are concerned about this know what our stance is, and that we are strictly operating within the confines of the jail. So people that are brought there, those are the only people that are going to come in contact with our 287G program as we operate it now. And I think during the meeting that they're referring to, one of the ICE officials indicated we don't know what it would look like without Washington County's participation. It could be that we would be going door to door, acting on information that we found out, going into workplaces, to enforce the immigration laws. Whereas right now they're saying we don't need to do that because we've got this partnership, and we believe that it's effective, and we're basically catching the people that can't abide by the nation's laws. So to me, it just seems to be a good compromise on this issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got to tell you, I certainly with this, 287G program, you said it's been around for basically 10 years. I mean, and there are other. You can speak to this. I understand if you don't know, but there are other Arkansas law enforcement agencies doing the same thing, right? Are they participating?
Yes. The only two that I'm aware of in the state are us in Benton County.
Okay.
At this time, and there's only, I think, probably before President Trump took over, there were maybe 30 to 40. I can't remember the number, but now it's increased by about 15 or 20 just in the last month or two. The specific detention model that we're using now. Bear in mind that whenever all this kicked off, we not only did the detention model, but we were also active in a task force model that was basically the assignment was to try and identify really bad people out there, the gang members, people that were committing violent crimes, human trafficking. And but as time went on and the administration pretty much basically told them that kind of activity needed to stop, so we got out of that program and we stuck with detention. So also along that time, there were a lot of departments that took the cross-deputization, and they had their deputies or police officers on the street that had the ability to conduct business in the street, as immigration officers. And that kind of fell by the wayside. It caused a lot of angst, but we never participated in that particular one. With the racial profiling issues and things of that nature, it just appeared to be very problematic from the start, and it just hasn't worked out for any of the agencies that did it.
I just want to. I feel like that you guys are in a tough situation, just in terms of the problem that has been allowed to persist for a very long time, which is unchecked illegal immigration, and now we're dealing with it. And now somebody like you, this is the Washington County Sheriff we're talking with, Tim Helder. You have to put up with activists who say things like, I'm reading from an article here, immigrants are now living in fear of being pulled over. Well, I mean, the simple fact is we have people here who are in direct violation of our laws, and they are upset. I guess some people, I don't think a majority of people, but some are upset that you, a law enforcement officer, are cooperating with the federal government to enforce those laws. I mean, can you comment on that a little bit? I mean, kind of in a difficult place, but I respect your stance.
Well, I think several things have happened, and I think during the last administration, there was a magic wand waved over a large group of people that were here illegally that were basically given the right to be here, and then more came, and I just think with the shift in politics to a more conservative command staff, I just think that there is a lot of fear and angst, that there is going to be a lot of this knocking on doors, kicking doors in, and doing all this. I just don't believe that's going to happen. I don't know what the answer is. I do think at some point our immigration laws and the policies need to be looked at, maybe revamped in certain areas to make it more clear for us how to operate, and to give the ability, I suppose, for people that are here and have raised children here. I think that it just needs to be much more clear how we do that. Paul, bottom line is I'm not a hater. I am not a hater. I'm here to basically serve all people, and I just really, in my heart of hearts, believe that we're doing the right thing in what I would term as a balancing act.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm vilified on one side.
Yeah.
But what I told him in that meeting, it was kind of taken out of context, was if I determined to stop participating in 287G and turning a blind eye to the immigration issue, what I said was, you have 50 people in this meeting, I'd probably fill Bud Walton Arena with the people that would be aggravated and mad at me for not doing it. But that aside, that really has nothing to do with my decision-making. It's really all about, there's a law on the books, and I just don't feel like I have the ability to not enforce laws. So, I don't think I can pick and choose. And I don't think that's the right thing to do.
You're exactly right. I want to follow up real quick before we run out of time. On that slideshow, the Democrats, that last thing that they put up on that slideshow had an allegation about, depriving somebody of food and water and that sort of thing. I mean, what are they talking about there?
Well, and I don't remember the year, but the actual incident occurred, and I'll try and keep it as condensed as I can. But there was a lady that was arrested for pirating CDs, and it was a low-end felony, and she was going before a circuit judge up in the courthouse, and something happened between the attorneys and the judge, and there's a holding room up in the courthouse, and he said, take her back and put her in the holding room while we work this deal out. And then it was like a perfect storm occurred. It was a snow front moving in. The judge was going to Little Rock, and she was forgotten. And so for an entire weekend, this poor lady was in a lockdown room in the courthouse. That, by the way, I mean, fool me once is one thing, but we got that thing retrofitted, and it should never happen again. We've got a lot of bells and whistles on it. But that did happen. But it was not about her being here illegally. It was a human error by an employee who received discipline over that, but he didn't do it on purpose. The whole thing was it was just a horrible state of affairs and how that came about. But if the indication is that she was punished in that manner because she was here illegal, it's absolutely false.
Okay. Well, that's. I just want to say at the Democratic meeting, that's what they were. That's the slide. I've got it in front of me here. That's what they're saying. And so I just wanted to get to the bottom of that, and I appreciate you explaining that because again,
Sure.
that has nothing to do, like you said, with being here illegally and that sort of thing. Sheriff Tim Helder, I appreciate it, sir. I appreciate to make the relationship, and appreciate you coming on the program to talk about this important partnership between the federal government enforcing our immigration laws. And I certainly know a lot of folks out there agree with what you said today, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Have a good day.
Yes, sir. You be safe. Thank you. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program, brought to you by Conduit Media, and the Liberty Machine rolls on. Back in a minute.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Arkansas small businesses are tired of taxes that are too high and regulations that work as obstacles to small business success. If you own a small business, it's time to take action. Now, I'm not talking about the local chambers of commerce. I'm talking about an organization that's actually run by small business owners and are fighting for small businesses right here in the state of Arkansas. They're called Conduit for Action, and they're on your side. Conduit for Action is here not to get something from the government, but to be left alone by the government. Think of them as your personal advocate for limited government at the Capitol in Little Rock. If you're tired of all the politicians talking with no results and ready for action, start outsourcing your government affair needs with Conduit for Action. Go now to conduitforaction.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforaction.org, and stand up for small business in Arkansas.
Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755. 9755 or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Kind of building on what Sheriff Helder was saying, we didn't talk about this at all, but on Friday you had Sheriff Joe Arpaio getting pardoned. Welcome back to the program, by the way. And, isn't that about the rule of law? I mean, can anybody honestly say that Sheriff Joe Arpaio was penalized, was found guilty, or, can anybody honestly say it wasn't because he made the federal government look bad? I know they're going to say he violated this order or that order, but, essentially what he was doing was attempting to do the job the federal government was abdicating, to do the job the federal government was abandoning. And if you actually look up the constitutional powers of a sheriff, it's no wonder that, they waited to do this after he was sheriff, after he had gotten thrown out of office. Which, if you look up the funding behind that, that's familiar Democratic groups that were trying to get him out of office. But, think about how he exposed the job the federal government was going to do. Think about the enormous constitutional authority that a sheriff actually has. A sheriff is the most powerful constitutional entity that you have in your county, and that's why you need to be very careful on who you select as sheriff. Does he realize the power that he has? Does he realize he has the authority to tell the federal government to turn back around and exit the premises of the county? Many of them don't. Some do, and they don't have the testicular fortitude to actually be confrontational. They're scared. Not all sheriffs, but many. But in the context of Sheriff Joe Arpaio, if you're down there where he was in Arizona and you're trying to enforce our immigration laws, and what do they say? What did they say? You're racial profiling. Well, how in the world are you supposed to police people who are coming from Mexico? Even if you were not racial profiling, how you could claim that you always were, because we're talking about people who are coming here illegally from a country of Mexico, from the country of Mexico. How would you do that? If I were to tell you, for example, it's just the whole context of profiling bothers me. Whether we're talking about immigrants from, Yemen. Okay, maybe people who are born in Yemen shouldn't come to America. They have no constitutional right to be here, but maybe we say, you know what? No thanks. Okay, well, that's profiling. What about what Mexico? Well, that's profiling. Okay, well, let's take something basic. Now, in the politically correct world of today, they would completely reject the statement. But let's say you had something terrible happen. Let's say you had a rapist. Let's say you had a rapist on the loose, Joe. Terrible thing, right? You're looking for a rapist. Are you going to look for an equal number of women and men when you're looking for a rapist? You're going to look for more men. It would be preposterous to say, I think there's a good chance that this rapist is going to be a woman. No, there's not. We live in a society today, though, where they would tell you, oh, no, you're a discriminant, you're a sexist, you're a genderist, you're a, what is it even called? I don't know what they would call us, but they would say, no, you need to profile an equal amount of women and men while you're looking for the rapist. Mm-hmm. And these are the same people that used to, before Donald Trump was in there. And there's still obviously people in the State Department, in the deep state, that agree with Obama's version of things. That's all through the media. But there are people that think, no, that is the way to do this. That is the way to do this. Here, this is where it gets even worse. Let's literally make the needle in a haystack even worse by collecting all of your data in the context of looking for terrorists. Don't do any actual deductive reasoning. Don't do any actual police work. But instead, let's just collect everybody's digital data illegally and make the haystack humongous, and maybe we'll be safer. Maybe we'll find the needle in the haystack that way. But no. Policing people from the country of Mexico or from Middle Eastern countries like Yemen, no, that is profiling. You can't do that. That's ridiculous. Back in a minute.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
That don't make a lick of sense to me. And part of my responsibility and all of our responsibility is to make sure that we're being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And a big part of that is going to be all these hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of contracts that get awarded to various vendors to provide a multitude of services throughout the state. Now, I think lobbyists have a lot of influence and more than what they need to have in this process. I expect them to go down there and to do their client's bidding. And I expect the client, the vendor, they're accountable to their shareholders, so their motivation is profit, and that's very obvious. My motivation needs to be the checkbook and the taxpayer and making sure that they are getting the best bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we need to do a review of this, and not just do a review, but we're going to sponsor legislation in 2019 to actually address our procurement system, because I do believe that it is broken, it is flawed, and we need changes.
Yeah.
I don't know that you ever get something 100% perfect, but by gosh, we got work to do.
So back during, the biggest issue that I can remember, with this procurement process, it happened, and you tell me if this is going to address some of these issues, back with the DHS software debacle when we were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being spent to these companies to do work that never actually materialized, and there were no clawback procedures in some of these cases where the government had no recourse to go and get the money back on when these guys were basically like crooks. So is that one aspect of this?
Oh, that's a huge aspect of this, Paul, and it's amazing some of these contracts that are awarded and the lack of clawbacks or performance bonds or protection for the state and the taxpayers, and that a lot of times vendors can get a contract and be far, far away from living up to the performance expectations, yet still keep it. And what happens is we just let this contract just kind of runs out, and then you rebid it. Well, if you're a year and a half into a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract or whatever it is, and we find out that, listen, we're getting the short end of the stick here, something needs to be done. I wouldn't go off and pay a contractor to build a house and see that they have royally botched the foundation, but allow them to go ahead and continue to frame the house and put the roof on when I know that they've already messed up the foundation, but I've already contracted with them. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I'm not in the business of trying to have people, get the one up on me. And I kind of get that attitude when I go to the legislature. I'm not trying to let people get the one up on the citizens of this state. And so when it comes to clawback measures and protections for the state, that's been lacking. Now, I know that we're working to address that, not just in 2019, but right now. But there's a lack of credibility with a lot of these agencies because the arc of history shows that there's been very little done when it comes to contracts not being met and performance being subpar, that they have not gone back and recouped money. And you can't defend that. And so mine's not just to sit here and rain on what's happened in the past, but, to mention it and bring it up to say, this is why we've got work to do today, tomorrow, and, for the long term, because these things are not going to fix themselves.
We're talking again with Senator Scott Flippo. Michael Wickline writes, quote, "The review of procurement laws comes in the aftermath of skirmishing by some lawmakers and Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson's administration over various contracts." I think the biggest contract, we covered this last hour briefly, that's recently made the news, and I wonder if you know anything about it. It's about this new DHS contract that I guess the Legislative Council, they were...
Program.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. So last week, we had pretty much continuing wall-to-wall coverage of the situation in Fort Smith with Senate District 8, specifically concerning State Senator Jake Files, as well as the Arkansas Republican Party, and as well as the Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson doing what I believe is not allowing Jake Files to resign as to avoid a special election. And it's something that's actually been kind of growing over the weekend. The pressure has been building really towards the end of last week. Then we have the Times Record of Fort Smith, their editorial now calling for State Senator Jake Files to resign his position as well. I've called for it, I guess, since April or May. Now the Times Record is calling for it. And now I would like to welcome to the program to discuss this important issue. I have with me the chairman of the Pulaski County Republicans, Mark Johnson. He's also the chairman of the Association of Republican Chairmen. Did I say that right, Mark? Mark, are you with us? Do we not have Mark with us? Mark, can you hear me?
Paul, I'm here.
There you are.
Here.
No, okay. So,
Thank you.
So you're the chairman of the Republican County Chairmen, right?
Well, they call it the president of the Arkansas Republican County Chairs Association.
Okay,
yeah. And Paul, let me make clear and do my quick little disclaimer. We haven't met and discussed this, and so I am speaking for Mark Johnson only. And I think I've talked to some of my colleagues, other county chairs, and they share my concerns. But as officially the organization hasn't, we haven't met since the end of July. So certainly we haven't discussed this. But
I understand. But you go ahead. But the same thing goes for the Pulaski County Republicans. You're just speaking for Mark Johnson, right?
That's true. But I can tell you that a lot of my friends that are members of our county committee, as well as people who are other county chairs around the state, share a lot of my feelings on this. But there's no official position. And let me say this in all fairness: the only person that speaks for the Republican Party is Chairman Webb, and his statement, although I think it was a little too neutral from my way of thinking, was correct in that he pointed out some facts. Of course, Senator Files is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. On the other hand,
have you read that indictment?
We have to.
Good grief! Have you read the indictment?
Well, I've read this thing, and that's why I feel the way I do.
I'm sorry, the affidavit. The affidavit, not the indictment. My apologies. Go ahead.
I did read it, and let's clarify. There has not yet been an indictment. However, sometimes when someone is under investigation, there's a locked closet over at the FBI office, and all this evidence is being piled up to take to a grand jury, which is, of course, secret. But in this particular case, we're dealing with things that are absolutely in the public record. What could seriously be considered to be misappropriation of general improvement funds, some shady operations in the procurement process on this ball field, in Sebastian County, and it's more than just a little bit of smoke. There's a pretty good simmering fire that the public can look at, and it's very troubling to me. And actually, Paul, this is not just about this situation with Senator Files. We had the issue earlier in the year with former Representative Micah Neal and Senator John Woods, and it's the same kind of thing. It's an abuse of power and abuse of authority, and the kind of thing that we many of us are Republicans because we didn't want to do this. We watched the Democrats do this for many, many years, and it's imperative that as Republican leaders, we demand that our people do better. And if they don't do better, they need to step out of there. I, for one, didn't go through what I have as a Republican for over 37 years to have some young thieves tarnish the brand that was built by Governor Winthrop Rockefeller, his son, Win Paul Rockefeller, John Paul Hammerschmidt, Ed Bethune, and other leaders of integrity that I think stand against this type of thing. And we, in the words of Chairman Webb, that he said in the speech that I heard not too long ago, he said, as the majority party, we have to work hard and be careful not to become what we've replaced. And that's what I'm fighting against now. I don't want us to become what we've replaced.
I appreciate we're talking with Mark Johnson. I so appreciate you saying this, and because you're exactly right. So let me just get you on record. I mean, do you believe that Jake Files should resign?
Yeah, I absolutely believe he should resign, and not necessarily just because of the situation, but because this is clearly not going to go away. You don't have to be an attorney to see the kind of problems he has. He can't do his job properly and deal with this. And what could happen is by not having, if he doesn't resign soon, to allow Governor Hutchinson to call a special election, it's quite likely that there couldn't be a special election before the fiscal session, and that the citizens of that district wouldn't be represented when the legislature meets in I guess it's early February. So when something like this happens, and I think the local paper, the Southwest Times Record, which you alluded to a moment ago, in their editorial, I think they pointed out how this just needs to be stopped. And if he is indeed innocent, he can spend his time proving that. And certainly I would give him, as Chairman Webb said in his statement, he is innocent until proven guilty. But on the other hand, he doesn't have the right to drag down the constituents of his district and all that. Paul, this whole General Improvement Fund thing has just been a holy mess. I mean, we, this started, and just to kind of help your listeners kind of get a perspective on this, the General Improvement Fund is state surplus that's divvied out for different types of projects. And years ago, it was something that the governor worked on. Well, when Mike Huckabee became governor, the Democrats in the legislature, primarily Senator Nick Wilson, Pocahontas, didn't want to see that happen. So they came up with some new ways to divide that money up that kept the governor from having the kind of control that the executive branch had in the past. And the thing has evolved through the years where it's become kind of a legislative slush fund. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there aren't many wonderful needs of government that have been funded by that. I mean, there are fire trucks for our volunteer fire departments and senior citizen centers and things that are, properly done and done by the book, and people can be proud of that. But the system itself, unfortunately, lent itself to some corruption, and this is the ultimate example of it. The example in Washington County, the first example, and this kind of thing that we apparently see in Sebastian County is another example of what happens when you have this type of just corruption. It is what it is.
We're talking with Mark Johnson. He is the president of the Republican County Chairman Association, also Pulaski County Chairman of the Pulaski County Republicans. But he is not speaking for those organizations here. He's just coming on, giving his personal opinion. He's called for Jake Files' resignation. So just talk to me about this, Mark, because like you said, you've been doing this for 37 years. This is not what you wanted. Republicanism in Arkansas has always tried to stand for clean government compared to the Democrats. And yet here we are where they're not calling for his resignation, or at best they're stalling so that they don't have to do a special election, which I believe is a form of soft tyranny. They're trying to make sure that their chosen person gets to kind of step in. We have the leadership of the Republican Party down at the Marble Palace, who are not saying anything. The governor is not saying anything. And the media is not saying anything that much. I mean, you have the Times Record. Kudos to them. But I mean, if you Google Jake Files' name, you really won't find too many articles past the middle of last week where this is a huge thing. And you would think, especially since he's a Republican, and especially since the Republican Party is supposed to be different than the Democrats, everybody would be piling on, and yet there's a lot of silence out there. Address some of that and the leadership's failing us right now.
Well, I'm loath to criticize other Republicans because of the intensity or lack thereof of their attack on this, and there's a propensity, Paul, for all of us to let the judicial process play out. But the difference in this case is that, as I said a moment ago, if we allow this to play out a little longer, then you're going to have it's District 8, I believe.
Yes,
you told me that the citizens of Senate District 8 wouldn't have a senator, and we've seen these things happen before, where, especially in federal cases, where the U.S. attorney steps in and says, here's your choices. You can go to jail for, let's see here, under the sentencing guidelines, 30 years or so, or you can can go ahead and plead guilty to this, this, and this, and you might only spend 10 years. And that's the way these things work. And we know that. And that's why I think a lot of people anticipate, people I've discussed it with recently, and several of them are attorneys, that's probably the kind of thing we're going to see in a case like this. The information that was in the affidavit seeking the search warrant that you just referred to a minute ago, it was powerful. It was very specific, and again, this isn't like something that could only exist in someone's lockbox in the basement of their office building. These are public records from the city of Fort Smith, the Western Arkansas Planning and Development District, the state of Arkansas. These are things that anyone can go look up and read them, and they create a trail of breadcrumbs that unfortunately is a very sad thing, but it shows some corruption. I mean, the young lady that worked, I believe her name was Ms. Gonzalez, that worked for Senator Biles, is involved. She was supposedly to be one of the subcontractors, and it appears there's violation of procurement process on this. And this is probably what led to the city canceling the contract on this ball field. But it's, Paul, when public officials get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, it's a sad thing, not just for that public official. It's for all of us citizens. It's a failure of our system, because these are truly positions of public trust. And when someone is abusing it, let's talk about a couple other resignations. You had one up in your neck of the woods. Senator Paul Bookout resigned, 2-3 years ago?
Yes, sir.
And he was not accused of stealing taxpayers' money. He was only accused of misappropriating campaign funds that had been given to his campaign. And I'm not excusing Senator Bookout for that. I'm simply comparing that. That's, to me, stealing tax dollars is a lot higher bar and a lot more serious thing than the fact that he bought a big screen TV with some money that someone gave to his campaign fund.
Right. I agree with
we
that.
had the same thing happen with on our side of the aisle, Lieutenant Governor Mark Darr, who just did some very sloppy things in the way he handled his money and his accounts at both campaign and his office. And because there was an ethics complaint and it was proven to be correct, and there were those on both sides of the aisle. We Republicans, we're saying he needed to resign, and of course he did. But this is about real tax dollars and a conspiracy to misappropriate them, and just Paul, we could talk about all day about should a sitting state senator be able to even go in and bid on doing this kind of work, even legitimately. There's places where you couldn't do that, but but this goes well beyond this. This is evidently corruption.
Yeah, the opportunity of corruption there, the temptation is great, and then you have, when it comes to him, the idea of him down there in the fiscal session. I mean, my speculation was last week, look, he's going to resign, but they're going to do it to where you don't have to have a special election, and that would mean that the city of Fort Smith and District 8, they're not going to have adequate representation, and I guess they're just willing to sacrifice that. Now, I mean, going back to this phrase, because I read your remarks where where you became the chairman of the Republican County Chairman Association, and you talk about Republicans and clean government. I think clean government means, hey, you stand up for transparency and you say, if we got to have a special election, we let the chips fall where they may. And, heck, I mean, any listeners in Fort Smith want to run for Jake File's Senate seat, give me a call, 870-275-9799, or text me. I'd love to hear from you. But, I mean, at this point, the sad thing is, Mark, we're talking with Mark Johnson, I don't think they're going to do this and allow a special election to take place, and that really is a shame to the Republican brand that you and other activists, grassroots people have worked so hard to convince our neighbors, hey, the Democrats, we're different than them, and yet this is going to be allowed to, and it just is a blemish on everybody. I mean, it makes anybody in Arkansas who's a Republican look bad right now.
Well, Paul, I've heard a lot of the criticism, and let's be honest now, I've heard a little bit of it from you sometimes. The Republicans and Democrats, there's no difference. They all do the same stuff. And that bothers me. It pains me. Frankly, in some cases, it's true. And when you have, always, we've had Republicans who are some of the finest people on earth, and then we have a few that are not the best, and then we have some, that are just total opportunists. And we have to watch out for that because we're now the majority party, and these opportunists are going to run as Republicans now instead. Used to, they would have run as Democrats because it was all about them and not about any kind of political philosophy in the first place. But by having, and we can't deny the ballot to anyone, and people need to understand that. In some states, Republicans can say, that Paul Harrell guy, we don't think he's very good. He's a crook. We're not going to let him run as a Republican. Well, we can't do that here. I mean, let's be honest, we had an American Nazi running one time, and we had to gather everyone up and get the word out that we need to beat this guy. But because legally we could not keep him off the ballot. And that's the case, with a lot of these candidates. I'm not saying that was a very rare situation, but still, the fact is we have to be mindful of who these candidates are, and we have to what I call defend the brand. We have to protect what that brand means. We're the party of cleaning up Arkansas, not making it like it was for so many years. And the scandals like Nick Wilson. And let me mention another resignation story. There was a senator from North Little Rock back in the 80s, I believe, who resigned for a non-governmental related problem. I think it was some kind of fraud in his company, but he resigned, and there was a special election, and a gentleman won the special election, and then later that year there was the regular election, and he was defeated by one of the state representatives who could not run in the special election because of the prohibition on legislators running for, when they already have a state office, running for in a special election. So people say, well, that's just to grease the skids. Well, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, if someone is qualified, then the voters can make that determination. But it's important that they not be denied representation during, and people say, well, it's just the fiscal session. And, of course, too often people, that's just a rubber stamp.
Yeah, well, look what happened last time. Last time, Governor had to do the veto, the line item veto scheme that some people didn't even think was constitutional. But, I mean, it was a contentious fiscal session last time.
Yes, it was. And also, with an extraordinary majority, I think it's 2/3, they can take up other legislation. And I fully expect that to happen. So there can be important things happen in this session. Mm-hmm. And it's just regardless of where the district is, those people deserve to have representation in it. And more than anything else, Paul, this has reached a stage of embarrassment and casting a bad light on all Republicans.
Mark Johnson, I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate calling for the resignation of Jake Files, and you make some great points, and I really, really, really appreciate you coming on the program.
Paul, my pleasure. Wish I could get you without a podcast sometime, but I enjoy listening to your podcasts when I'm out on my lawnmower.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, anything to pass the time while you're on the lawnmower. Appreciate it, Mark. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Paul.
All righty,
yes,
folks. By the way, if you're an iTunes listener, that podcast, or iTunes or Apple iOS user, or SoundCloud, you get the podcast. Go to the iTunes store, type in the Paul Harrell program, and click subscribe, and you're going to get the show every day in 2 files. So, I mean, I would highly recommend it. Mark Johnson listens to it while he's on his lawnmower. We've got to take a break, folks. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language. The purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office. And second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist healthcare program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. I just got a text message. Somebody wants to, in the Fort Smith area, wants to set up a meeting at the 1836 Club to discuss running against Jake Files. I'm sorry, the 1835 Club. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the better one. That's the one that's more prestigious, and everything else. Deep in the bowels of the 1835 Club, the Legion of Doom. That's what I think of them. The Legion of Doom. Anyway, real quick, wrapping this hour up, I do want to read some of the Times record here on Jake Files. I mean, they make some incredible points about how he really can't do his job with all of the, distractions that are going on. It even talks about, Gonzalez, the affidavit. It says that the FBI decided to investigate is not surprising. Red flags were everywhere with regards to the GIF grant, and testimony in the affidavit confirms that bids are fraudulent, at least according to the two companies that Files claimed put out the bids on the project. In fact, both companies state they don't do water line work at all, which is the type of work the grant was allocated for. The Times record has asked Files repeatedly for any documents, phone records, or other information that could clear up seemingly straightforward questions on the water line bids. He has not done so. The public shouldn't have to wait for the FBI to provide clarity on this confusing web of information. Files' legal troubles don't end there with a sports complex. He's also been sued as a defendant with FFH Construction for more than $1.2 million. In April, a Fort Smith director filed a theft by deception report against Files, accusing him of stealing $33,200. Keep in mind that Files has served on such legislative committees as the Senate Revenue and Taxation, Joint Budget, and Audit. You thought it's almost like I wrote this for the Times record. For the record, I did not. Listen to this. Times record says, we have lost trust in the state senator. Files has said he won't run for re-election in 2018, but he must do more than that. He should step down immediately. Now, none of this that you've heard this hour is news to me or to Conduit, but we got to, I'm just glad more and more people are joining on the bandwagon, frankly.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
They're not a fan of it. Jonathan Dismang had the vote expunged, so they're going to meet again on Wednesday. And it's the difference between a 75. Is that true, Scott? Did I mess something up?
Well, first of all, yeah, no. So, we met on Wednesday of this week in Legislative Council. You know, we had to adjourn last Friday.
Okay.
We were kind of at a stalemate. So Senator Dismay did make a motion to expunge the vote, to re-vote on this, to vote to review this contract again. And, and I believe that Senator Dismay was looking at it through an honest perception. And we had some disagreements over this. And, the opposing side on this contract made some legitimate points, Paul, specifically that the current vendor that has this contract did not file a protest when they lost the new contract. So there's a procedure that you go by, and this happens with plenty of vendors where, they feel that, one of their competitors did something that wasn't right or didn't answer a question correctly, and they try to call them out on that. Now, the current vendor did not file that protest. And so their argument is that this is kind of after the fact. This is the process. It went through these channels, and, we need to respect the process. And if there's changes that need to be made, we can make those with legislation, in the next General Assembly. Well, how I approach this is technically you might be right, and there is a protocol and a process. But I don't think the majority of my constituents, they're as concerned about the process as they are about making sure they're getting the best benefit possible and that their tax dollars are used in the wisest way possible. And that was something that I wasn't convinced on this contract. And the company that got it had bid over $42 million more than the current vendor who's been providing these services for the past 20 years. And I'm not saying they've done everything perfect. I'm sure they haven't. But the state had not had any write-ups on them. There's no deficiencies or demerits or anything. Everything was satisfactory according to documentation in DHS. And so I started scratching my head and wondering, well, how in the world can a new vendor come out there and get this contract and bid $42 million more? And they also, the vendor that currently has it, they've never had any noted or documented performance issues, with the state. And is somebody at DHS, when things go wrong, are they not documenting are they not documenting when there's poor performance?
Mm-hmm.
Because they should be.
Good question.
I get it's a lot. It's extra work. It's going to make life harder, not easier. But that's what we're down there for, to make sure the people that we serve. And I don't care if you're an elected official or if you're a state employee, we serve the taxpayer.
Yeah. So
that's got to be our driving. That's got to be our driving motivation.
So tell me. So what is the status now? Then I guess I've misinterpreted this story. You guys met last Wednesday, and so you're going to meet again to try to interview?
No. Let me walk you through this, Paul. Okay. We met last Wednesday. I put a hold on this contract because I had some concerns with it, and several of my colleagues had concerns with it, both Republicans and Democrats. So there's a bipartisan concern here. And we go into ALC. That was on, we met on Wednesday of last week, and then we went into ALC on Friday, Legislative Council, which is the committee that kind of runs the state when we're out of session. And so this contract, I had put a hold on it and did not want to release that hold because I wanted to extend it out for another month so my colleagues and I could continue to vet it and get some questions answered and see if we couldn't get some corrections made. And for an example, the company that won the contract, they came back at the 11th hour on Thursday and offered up a $5 million performance bond at no cost to the taxpayer. Why in the world didn't we get that on the front end?
That's exactly right.
So that's no cost to the taxpayer, and there's $5 million of extra protection there. Might there be some other things that we might be able to tweak and adjust to make better?
Yeah.
So that was the premise for wanting to hold this up, and not saying that this might not have been the right company, but I'm not sure that they were. But either way, if this is the current process.
It's like you
it
said.
needs to be looked at.
Yeah, it's like you said, $42 million difference. The proposed 3-year, $75.3 million contract with Deloitte Consulting has drawn criticism because it's more costly than the 3-year, $54.4 million proposal submitted by the current contract holder. I mean, you're exactly right, and it's funny. Scott, you sounds like you've read The Art of the Deal or something. You're trying to squeeze these guys.
I have actually read The Art of the Deal. Probably when I was about 15 or 16 years old, I read it. A great book, by the way. But, this is not rocket science. I mean, the objective here is to make sure that whoever gets the contract, you can't just weigh price. You have to look at their ability to meet the standards. But what procurement and DHS had done, and specifically DHS, is they had scored these contracts, and 80% of it was technical, meaning performance, and 20% was weighted at cost. Well, over 7 years, this was a $100+ million contract.
Yeah.
And only 20%, consideration was given to the cost of it. Now, I get the argument, which is going to be, well, Scott Flippo could go form an LLC tomorrow and come back and bid it out at $250,000, and if all you consider is cost, then he would get it. And I would not be in any kind of position to meet the standards of this contract.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's an argument that you can just rest solely on.
Let me ask you this.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. It is hour number 2 on this Monday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. The phone number to call us or text is 870-275-9799. This headline here from Hunter Field of the Gazette: Arkansans offer Texans hand after coast devastated by storm. Obviously, our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody in Houston in this disaster that's unfolding before us. But it did kind of spark a reminder, the flooding that northeast Arkansas experienced earlier this spring and the recovery effort that's underway. Joining us to talk about that now, we do have with us from Senate District 19, Senator Linda Collins-Smith. Linda, welcome back.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be on today.
Absolutely. So just tell us, in light of the flooding, it's on everybody's minds what happened down in Houston and what happened in Texas and the Gulf Coast. But, what's the status of the flooding that northeast Arkansas experienced a couple months ago?
Thank you for having me on, Paul. I really appreciate you. And I have to say, first of all, I have to say for Houston, God bless you all. They are down in Texas. I have to say that is so devastating, and we just first of all hope everyone is safe. They can get everyone out. Heed the warning, folks. Get out. Just do what they say. Get out, and so God bless them all. As to just help them. We hope that they can get out of there. So we'll be praying for them and know that they're going to have needs as well. And as they're just now in their emergency time, and we need to help them however we can. But we also have we're just coming out of our emergency up in northeast Arkansas in Randolph County. I'll talk about specifically in that area. As you know, we had the flooding, and then no one sees water there anymore. But when that water and flooding went on, the people were so gracious and wonderful and kind to us. And then there's still all of those unmet needs. And thank you for talking to us about that today. We have many people that, we look at the unmet needs. We still have identified at least 188 people with unmet needs, and FEMA's left, and there are people that are still hurting, and many of them haven't, been touched yet. And so we talk about that today. I live there in that county, and we walked through there recently and had KARK. I thank them for coming back and going through the community, even up in Clay County, and seeing some people there, and going back to some of the rivers. We've talked about some of those needs, and I would like to talk to you a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I know a lot of people think when the water's gone, everything's fine. That's not necessarily the case.
That's right, and I think that's the part that people forget. The water's gone. So let me give you, for instance, some people on the river. They everything in their home flooded. They had 30 minutes an hour to get out in an area up around Success. That was Clay County. Randolph County got a little bit more notice, of course, but that area, the Success area, for instance, those people had to get out so quickly. All of their stuff flooded. That stuff's all in their yard. They needed help removing everything out of their home, and that stuff's in the yard. Some people came from West Arkansas. A group of attorneys that people called me and said, "How can we help?" Well, they came up and helped muck their house out, gutting it all out so it could dry out, and that stuff's all in their whole household, still in their yard. But I will say this, we're able to get them some help, and those same people are going to come back. They're going to help them move that stuff out of their yard and finally get it to a dumpster and get it hauled off, and I'm thankful for that. They were having trouble with credit reports. So you wonder about all the problems. It's lots of things, and it doesn't go away. Look how wet it's been, and their houses wouldn't dry out. And this goes on, and sometimes they can't pay their bills. These are hardworking people. They work every day. They work hard in this area, but yet the needs are many. And then there are those that need help financially, and they're working. They're trying to meet payments on their houses and payment on rent. And folks, it gets very hard. And so there's needs for to buy materials, and there's their houses have flooded sometimes more than once, and they're upside down on their houses. They can't afford to stop. So we have had fundraisers, as you all know. Rick Crawford, our congressman, had a fundraiser in Randolph County, and there's funds there. We've identified people with needs, and there's a lot of them. When you look at 188 people's homes that we have needs, I want you to think how much money that is. So, you're looking at the hundreds of thousands of dollars still in need, and we need your help. We've started an organization that we've started a nonprofit, and Kevin Barnett, he's a pastor of the Sutton Free Will Baptist Church. He is now the chair of that nonprofit organization, and that's our new Randolph County Recovery Committee. Okay. That committee is going to be our long-term committee, and I want you to know about that. They are now the organization that we will have set up for the future that will be able to do emergency management, emergency personnel. That's our long term. But we have now started working with United Way. The United Way is the one that you can do your tax, donations, deductible. We're working with them, and they're the ones now that you can actually work through in our area. You can make your contribution to, and we need your help. We need your help, folks.
So if they wanted to go to the United Way route, there's a way to designate that money specifically to Randolph County and the affected areas?
There is. And so the person that we would want you to call now would be a couple of people that they could contact. We used our local, we had our pastors were headed that in the beginning because that's how we were set up. But now they can contact one of two people, and one of those, of course, would be Kevin Barnett.
Okay.
But
so if you want to do the United Way route, the Randolph County Recovery Committee has the way to do that. Okay. So I think you've sent me Kevin Barnett's contact information, right? So I can give this number out, correct?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
we can go ahead and give that number out.
So 870-897-5295. That's 870-897-5295. His name's Kevin. It's the Randolph County Recovery Committee, and just ask about United Way donation and that sort of thing to try to continue to help out. Now, look, I know in light there's maybe some people that want to give to the folks down in Houston, and I know all that's going on. I just, as an Arkansas show, I just want to remind everybody there's still work to be done. There's still people up here, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing on this, Senator.
Thank you. And these people need help, and we want to help down in Texas, too. As soon as that water goes down, there'll be people wanting to get down there. We want to help them as well.
Yes.
And we need to. They're going to need a lot of help. And so as soon as people can get down there to help in that area, we're going to want to help them as well. Right now, we need to get them out of the water. So we need to get them out of there so we can, So we want to save lives first, and then we want to help them as well. And so anyone that can help the folks here in the Randolph County area, there's a lot of needs that still need to be helped. There are some people still can't get back in their homes here. So we want to help everywhere we can.
Yeah, absolutely. That number again, the Randolph County Recovery Committee, 870-897-5295. Kevin Barnett, that's 870-897-5295. Senator, while I have you on the line, I just want to ask you real quick, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of slow news going on, aside from the disaster in Texas and everything else. But last week, the news broke about one of your colleagues, fellow Republican, Senator Jake Files, and been mentioned in this affidavit. What are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, I know it's been in the news. I'm sure you're aware of it. What do you think about the situation?
Well, I'm really hate the circumstances of course, for Senator Files, and I know he's been a businessman and for a long time, and I hate that he's for whatever reasons and got himself in some trouble, and that's obvious. He's got himself upside down. He's got himself in some trouble. That's obvious through the bankers filing on him, and I hate to see that, but he has.
Yeah. Well, you yourself, you yourself were an ethics commissioner, correct?
That is correct.
At one time? Yes. Obviously, it's not just the banks, it was the FBI as well, right?
Yes, I've seen some documents. I've seen those documents, and I can just say that it doesn't look good. I'm not an ethics commissioner now. Right. That's all I can say right now. Mm-hmm. But it does not look good.
Certainly does not look good. I think I certainly agree with that statement at the very least. Senator Linda Collins-Smith, I appreciate you coming on. Now, before I let you go, you have not yet announced for re-election. Is that correct?
Not yet, but I needed to tidy up a few loose ends as a senator. Like I said, we had some major things happen as far as flooding goes. And as a senator, there were just things that I needed to take care of. I worked very hard. We've been in the legislature. A lot of things have gone on. 2 years before that, we did a lot of work with DHS on joint performance review. I was on that committee. We had 18 months, a lot of special sessions. And when you have 5 counties this far north of Little Rock, and you've got that much work to do, you're a business owner and a grandmommy, there's a whole lot of things going on. And truthfully, we just had a lot happen over the last few years. And I'm dedicated to doing the job. And so I've had a lot of things to do, but I've been a senator. And so I've been taking care of that business, and I've been dedicated, but I've been back in my district taking care of things. And those folks know I am going to take care of them. I'm out there, and they know where I'm at. They've been seeing me. So they know I'm going to take care of them.
Yeah. Well, certainly. Well, I definitely know in your district you're extremely popular. So I would certainly encourage you to run again. And you just let me know whenever that is, whenever you're announcing, or if you're going to announce, let me know. I'd love to interview about that. So
I think they know that I haven't abandoned them, and you'll be hearing from me soon.
All righty, Senator Linda Collins-Smith, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for having me, Paul.
All righty. Okay. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. Back in just a moment.
Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment. I want the truth of our economic condition to be known and debated. I'm not out to fool people into voting against their own interests. We need to trust people and then give them credit for understanding policies that promote freedom and free markets. We need to remind our constituents of the underpinning principles of our nation's founding document: freedom of worship, freedom to speak up, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition the government, and freedom to report issues.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group. The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, welcome back. Hey, we're going to get to the whiteboard here in just a little bit. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, whiteboard, look over there. It's pretty... I'll explain it. It's pretty simple, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on here. But there's a lot of effort out there to not give you the truth, and a lot of people want to do it by distracting you from the obvious truths that are in the news. And I'll tell you about that. Specifically, you can look at it with this Gulf Coast thing. That's certainly one example with what's happening on the Gulf Coast and how the media actually figures out a way to basically say, hey, look over there. And regardless, I mean, they position themselves, I mean, carefully crafted language is probably just, it's very admirable for even the highest, the people with the highest gubernatorial aspirations. That regardless of what happens, everything's fine in terms of their narrative. I mean, they're going to find a problem with whatever happens, whether the Gulf Coast is a complete disaster or whether it's not. They're going to try to figure out a way to make Donald Trump look as bad as they possibly can, and I certainly will talk more about that here in just a moment. And also, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about a Florida man. A white convict is going to be killed in Florida's first execution of a white man for killing a black man. Yeah, that's the sub-headline. That's the first opening paragraph. But wait till you actually see what really happened. And I think you'll understand that again, that feeds into with this exact narrative. The whiteboard here. Look over there. Look over there. Okay, yeah, let's talk about this for a second. So I've got a story in the news. And I have actually been following this specific federal law when it comes to your IDs, when it comes to your driver's licenses, your Arkansas driver's license. I've been following something called the Real ID Act for a very, very long time. The Real ID Act was something that was created shortly after September 11th. And the reason I have followed it personally is because I have always been a big supporter of the 10th Amendment, and I have always been one of these guys that says, hey, the states have the right to, exercise all the rights that aren't specifically enumerated in the Constitution. You understand? 10th Amendment. So I'm a big 10th Amendment guy. So I was always intrigued by noncompliance. So this Real ID Act, right? Now, under Governor Hutchinson, Arkansas is now moving to comply with the Real ID Act, which is a federal mandate of how our IDs should look. But for a long time, states across the country didn't do anything. It was amazing. There's a slew of articles you can find over at a blog spot called the 10thamendmentcenter.com. And you can find article after article about the Real ID Act and how no one did anything. The federal government passes this law, George W. Bush signs it, and everybody just yawns. Nobody does anything. Nobody makes any moves. Every time the compliance date approaches, the federal government would cave, and the federal government would push the compliance date back. And I've been following this for a long time, and I've always been fascinated. I mean, it's 2017. This thing was, I think, passed, 2002 or something. I mean, that's a long time for them to pass a federal mandate, and then it never happens. But so Jenny Monk, the Democrat Gazette, obtaining real IDs in Arkansas proves complex for new licenses. The devil's in the details. And she writes, to fly on an airliner or enter a federal building 3 years from now. You see, so now they're getting serious about it. 3 years from now, 2020. United States residents will have two options: gather their birth certificates, social security cards, and proof of residence to show at the door, or get a real ID. Real IDs in the natural state are referred to as Arkansas Voluntary Enhanced Security Driver's Licenses. And they will remain voluntary for the foreseeable future. We're talking about, it's voluntary, but you have to have it if you want to do anything. That's where we're going with this. Oh, it's voluntary, but you have to have it. That's how these things work. Now, if you see Governor Asa Hutchinson, tell him thanks for moving us in here in Arkansas one step towards compliance. All I'm saying is, there was a lot, and I know other states are doing it too. And that's, it's going to make us safer, right? It's how government grows. It's the seventh technique of how government grows. We got to make things safer, safer, safer. Cleaner, cleaner, cleaner. It's the factor. Number 7. You're going to have this to enter a federal building, but you will never, if the federal liberal judges have anything to say about it, you will never, ever, ever have to have an ID to vote to actually prove who you say you are. But you're going to have to comply with all of this stuff to make you safer, really, so the federal government can track who you are. That's what this is. But they don't care about tracking who you are when it comes to voting. They do care about tracking who you are when it comes to entering a federal building. We want you to have the Real ID Act. It's got to be safer, safer, safer. It's the factor, folks. It's how government grows. And I'm for one, I'm sick of it. I was talking about this the other day. I'm a new father. So I got a little daughter now. And we're just talking about these car seat regulations. And quite frankly, I think they're ridiculous. That's right. I said it. I think these car regulations with the seat, you start looking about how old my daughter is going to be a senior in high school before she can, sit in a regular seat, essentially. You got to weigh, it's absolutely outrageous. I was talking to my parents, and I was talking about, okay, what did you guys have to do? It's not that I'm not crazy. It's not that I'm not going to get a car seat, and I'm not going to want the safest thing for my daughter. She's my daughter. Are there other people less responsible than me? I'm sure there are. But in an effort to make things safer, it's the factor. What is it now? Okay, when they're when they're in the 9th grade, maybe they'll be able to ride in the front seat. Give me a break, folks. This is just ridiculous. It's infuriating to me when you start looking at all this stuff And, they put all this emphasis. It's another excuse for the police officers to pull your car over. Is the car seat? Is it, they reach back there. Your baby could be fast asleep, but they're going to shake and pull on it. This has happened to one of my family members, by the way. You reach in the back. Sir, that's our baby. We just got our baby to sleep. I'm just doing my job. I got to check and make sure you people aren't terrible parents. Leave us alone. I guess that's what I get to it. I was asking my parents, well, when you had my oldest sister, were there any of these regulations? Like, no, you could just hold them if you wanted to. You could just hold them and be driving down the road. And I think, oh my goodness, you mean the sky didn't fall? You mean it wasn't complete and total anarchy? You mean there wasn't just dead kids lying on the side of the road? But nope, we got to make things safer. We got to make things cleaner. We got to have a real ID. But we're not going to have a real ID to vote, though. Never. No, we don't need to do that, because then, we might actually have an accurate reflection of the consent of the governed. We don't want that.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Old, I read it. A great book, by the way. But, this is not rocket science. I mean, the objective here is to make sure that whoever gets the contract, you can't just weigh price. You have to look at their ability to meet the standards. But what procurement and DHS had done, and specifically DHS, is they had scored these contracts, and 80% of it was technical, meaning performance, and 20% was weighted at cost. Well, over 7 years, this was a $100+ million contract.
Yeah.
And only 20%, consideration was given to the cost of it. Now, I get the argument, which is going to be, well, Scott Flippo could go form an LLC tomorrow and come back and bid it out at $250,000. And if all you consider is cost, then he would get it. And I would not be in any kind of position to meet the standards of this contract.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's an argument that you can just rest solely on.
Let me ask you this. Because I'm reading further down in this article. So you're saying right now the contract is on hold, right?
No, it's not. The governor's going to move forward with it. The legislature does not have the ability. They do not have the authority of approval. Their authority rests with review.
Okay, so you were.
And so what were you? The legislature does not require to approve a contract in order for a governor to move forward with it.
Okay, because that's what I'm reading. That ACE is going through anyway. So. Why? I guess why is it just a formality that you guys even attempt to stop it or hold it up? I mean, what's the deal with that?
Sometimes I feel like it could be a formality, but it's not. There's a legitimate purpose. It allows legislators a chance to ask questions, to vet things, and sometimes you're able to, plenty of times in the past where legislators have put hold on various contracts for various reasons, and most times those issues get resolved. And that's why I wanted an extra month to continue discussions on this to see if we couldn't resolve some of those issues. Mm-hmm. And they wanted that contract reviewed then. And, it's always been the governor's prerogative that once the legislature appropriates the money, he's the executive. He's in charge of the executive branch. So, while they include the legislature as far as the review process, the final decision rests with the governor, and that's part of our Constitution, and I understand that, and I respect that, but that doesn't mean that I have to go along with something that I don't feel is right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Senator Scott Flippo, we appreciate it coming on the program. We're out of time. I appreciate you looking out for the taxpayers and trying to get the better deal, and, of course, they offered up a $5 million performance bond, so that certainly is a good thing. So we appreciate it.
There's a start. Thank you, Paul.
All righty. Thank you. Senator Scott Flippo, everyone. Got to go to break. Back in a moment.
something off your chest? Then call or text Paul now, 870-275-9799.
Get this. Gosh. Man, if you go all the way back to 2006, you will find some gems of quotes by people who claimed that the Republican Party of Arkansas represents the, the party of clean government. Maybe we'll get to more on that tomorrow. How about it? All right, so let's get to the whiteboard. Look over there. Look. Distract. Do you know that half of the country... It's like, look at this story. We got a tragedy in Houston. We've got a terrible flood over Texas. You got all these people. I'm going to go try to save some lives. I'm going to go into the danger. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to get my bass boat. I'm going to get my John boat. I'm going to do whatever I can. Try to help these people. You got the Cajun Navy that's been mobilized, which is essentially, you've got isn't the Cajun Navy just a bunch of good old boys with boats? You know, it's the equivalent of the guys. It's the equivalent of the good old Arkansas boys that during a snowstorm, they just, they'll just ride around in a truck just looking for people who've spun out in ditches. That actually happened to me one time. I was working a job. When I was in college, it required me to, curry things back and forth for a bank. And when I was doing this, one time, the snow came, and I had this company truck that I was driving, and I had to go somewhere kind of late, and then I was coming home, and I totally just spun out and went into a ditch. And I was thinking, so I immediately start calling my family and that sort of thing. And as I'm on the phone with my family, what happens? It's just random truck just pulls up, and pulls me out of the ditch. It's like it was nothing, and then they go on, and it's just people doing this to help other people, right? So we've got this going on, and yes, we have tragedy, and yes, we have a controversy between the mayor and Governor Abbott. Did the mayor of Houston tell him to stay put? Yes, he did. Did the governor say, you guys got to get out of here? Yes, he did. So whatever. We could spend time, Democrat, Republican, that sort of thing. But the truth is, look at all of these people who are trying to unify together, who are banding together for the sake of humanity. And then you've got CNN. Do you know that half of the country is racist? Essentially, for all intents and purposes, that's what they're trying to do. Yes, a lot of division out there. Really, we got people of all races that are trying to help each other out. And this is what it is. Look over there. The media, let's take first the hurricane, right? Let's take that first. So, the media is going to do everything that they can, and this is what they are doing, to set up a no-win situation. If you just look at the hurricane and look at Donald Trump. Okay, mainstream media, gosh, I hope it's a Hurricane Katrina. Gosh, I hope it's a Hurricane Katrina. I hope we can spin this. I hope Donald Trump fails. I hope FEMA doesn't work. I hope it's a complete disaster. And then maybe when it's not, maybe when you have people helping others and it is a lot better than Katrina and it's not, what do? Well, you know why? Of course they did. There's more white people down there, and of course the federal government's going to care about white people because there's more white people down there. They're going to be saved by the government because the government actually cares about white people. Do you see how, they set this thing up to where it's a no-win situation. They're always going, and the reality is that they're lying about it. They're lying about the actual cooperation, what is supposed to be a divided nation. In the racist, bigoted state of Texas is anything but. If you actually look at what's happening down there. And yeah, there are people that need our prayers. Yeah, there are families that have lost loved ones. Yeah, you have a lot of supplies that need to be going down there. We were just talking with Senator Linda Collins-Smith about how we got to help those people down there, right? But it isn't a Katrina. Media sets up a no-win situation. The media is all about look over there. And we see it here in Arkansas. I mentioned this last hour. What should be, I believe, a huge story doesn't get any coverage for some weird reason. I mean, it's ripe. It's the ripest thing in the world. You have a party that stands for moral superiority over the other, and that party is essentially embracing corruption. Nothing. Let's look at another national headline now, shall we? What do we have here? Oh, yeah, here it is. This is fantastic. I cannot believe this story. Oh, man, the Associated Press comes out with a story out of Florida. So Florida, they're going to have an execution. By the way, the governor's having another execution, too. Joe, remind us, we do need to briefly mention that. I slipped through the cracks. I got it on Friday. Just next short segment, I do want to say the governor has set a new execution day for somebody else. But so Florida, they're going to have an execution first for the state. Is what it says. Florida execution, a first for the state. Now, what is that first? What is it? I mean, it's not the first person to be executed in Florida. What is it? It's the first. What's the first white convict that's going to die for killing a black man? It will also be the first time that a new drug will debut. That's right. This drug, I love the headline. Lethal drug to debut. Yeah, it's a drug to debut. This drug name was going to be in lights. The Great White Way. Drug name. First time ever a white convict is going to die in Florida for killing a black man. Do you see the ridiculousness of the Associated Press here? Why in the world is that news? Unless you're trying to say, well, you know, most of the state of Florida is racist and they only kill people. They only kill black people for killing white people. But this is the first time a white person is going to die for killing a black person in the state of Florida. Can you believe that? Man, what's racism? Racism. Listen to this story. This is out of Gainesville. This is ridiculous. For the first time in state history, Florida is expecting to execute a white man today for killing a black person, and it plans to do so with the help of a drug that has never been used before in any U.S. execution. Barring a stay, Mark Asay. So this guy's name is Mark Asay, A-S-A-Y, 53, is scheduled to die by lethal injection after 6 p.m. Asay was convicted by a jury of 2 racially motivated, premeditated murders in Jacksonville in 1987. Third paragraph. The execution, Florida's first since the U.S. Supreme Court halted the practice in the state more than 18 months ago, is expected to be carried out using etomidate or etomidate, E-T-O-M-I-D-A-T. It's kind of like that show Eliminate. Etomidate, which is an anesthetic that has been approved by the Florida Supreme Court. 2 other drugs also will be used. Fourth paragraph in. Asay, who is white, fatally shot, get this, Robert Lee Booker, 34. Uh-oh. We have a black man that's named Robert Lee. Better take down this guy's tombstone. You never know. I know he was a black man, but they just removed an Asian man who had the name Robert Lee, and no one cared that he was Asian. So maybe this guy's tombstone that says Robert Lee might offend some snowflake. Now, his last name, is Robert Lee Booker, but you never know. Little did I know, last week an Asian man commanded the Confederate Army in Virginia in the 1800s. I didn't know that. Apparently ESPN thinks so. Fourth paragraph. Asay, who is white, fatally shot Robert Lee Booker, 34, a black man, after making multiple racist comments, prosecutors said. So apparently, whatever happened, folks, the guy got into a problem. He said some racist comments, and then he shot this guy. Terrible, right? Asay's second victim was a guy by the name of Robert McDowell, 26, who was of mixed race, white and Hispanic. Prosecutors say that Asay hired McDowell, who was dressed as a woman, for sex and shot him 6 times after discovering he was, in fact, a man. Really think race was the motivator there? I mean, the guy was soliciting illicit relations with Robert McDowell, 26, who was Hispanic. Now, notice they say white and Hispanic. Remember the whole George Zimmerman thing? That guy was clearly Hispanic, and he was labeled a white Hispanic. And then he was just labeled a white guy, so the headline was, "White Guy Shoots Black Guy, Trayvon Martin. If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon." Remember all this? Prosecutors say Assay hired McDowell, who was dressed as a woman for sex, and shot him 6 times after this. Doesn't it sound like this guy was a racist? I mean, I'm sure he used some racial words. I don't decide, but I'm pretty sure the bigger issue here was the man thought he was a woman, and then he ended up being a man, and then he got killed for it. I think that's a bigger motivator, don't you? Is it sexist of me? Am I showing my male? Is it my male privilege? Is it sexist of me to say that I'm pretty sure the guy was much more ticked off that he was actually a man when he thought he was a woman than if he was Hispanic or if his friend was a black guy? No? Anybody? Look over there. Do you not see the media? The media is saying, look over there. They're leaving so much of this out by omission. I mean, yeah, you eventually get there, but I mean, compare in the 4th paragraph, you find out what the real motivation of the crime was. Guy was hiring a prostitute and thought he was a woman and he was actually a man. Okay? That's the real motivator in paragraph 4, but you're telling me that the headline is Florida execution, a first for the state because a white convict is going to die for killing a black man. That's never happened before in the state of Florida. This is look over there journalism. It's not true. Fake news, you say what you want. It's getting to a level of ridiculousness. I almost said sophistication, but it's actually just ridiculous. I mean, these guys are crafting narratives, and it's just like the South Carolina shooting that was racist, racial, and then you have the community coming together, just like the communities are coming together all over Texas to try to help these people. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, whatever, life is on the line. That's what America really is. That's what America is generally. Do you know what America is? On the fringes, it's what you saw in Charlottesville or it's what you saw in South Carolina. But what America is generally are people that get together and have a heart for one another. I mean, if you just look objectively, as many mistakes as we all make as individuals. I mean, you just look when there is a disaster. The American people are the most generous people on the planet Earth. Whether it's Haiti, whether it's all that money that's going to end up going to support the Clinton Foundation and nobody knew it, which is what happened in a lot of cases. Whether it's what happened in Chile Chile. I'm sorry, I'm channeling my inner Barack Obama, pronouncing names of countries correctly. Or remember when the tsunami happened. The tidal wave happened over in Asia. People want to help, especially in America. We do still have a lot. As dwindling as our middle class is, we do still have a lot. And that's who we are. And yet, on the coasts and in the cities, they want you to think that we're just all a bunch of racists. That we're just waking up every day, just trying to figure out how to judge somebody by the color of their skin. You wake up every day and, sing that old What a Beautiful Morning song and, think about how I can be racist to somebody today. That's what half the country's like. That's certainly what the Deep South is, just trying to figure out how to be racist to somebody today. And then go about my business, keep being white, keep on making money, keep on exploiting my white privilege. That's what I like to do. That's what all of us like to do. Am I right, Joe? That's who we are if you listen to the media. Just wake up every day, do my calisthenics and my stretching, and I figure out how to judge somebody based on the color of their skin.
I wake up every morning and take a good inhale of that White male privilege.
White male privilege. That's what we do. It's on our minds constantly. They'd actually say it's not on our minds, but the university people, they'd be like, actually, no, you don't understand. It's so subconscious that we have to tear the whole country down, and that's what Antifa's about. We've got to burn the Constitution. We've got to rip heads off of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln and General Robert E. Lee. And did you know that Asian man's going to offend me if he calls the Virginia game? He's going to offend me greatly, so I'm going to remove the Asian Robert Lee. This Florida story, by the way, I just want you to know something. If you read this Florida story, it really sums up everything about the news in a lot of ways. That on August 24th, and this is when it was published in the AP, but I mean, you've got this really essentially at the 25th, but you've got all of this stuff going on with the hurricane, and yet this is what we want to talk about. White convict. First to die for killing a black man. They are now going out of their way, and I just wanted to make that point to you, to mislead you. Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back. ABC News is reporting that North Korea has fired a missile that flew over Japan. The Pentagon has confirmed this 90 minutes ago, almost to the minute. This is breaking news. Writing, we assess North Korea conducted a missile launch within the last 90 minutes. This is Colonel Rob Manning, the Director of Press and Operations of the Department of Defense. We can confirm that the missile launch by North Korea flew over Japan. The reports are already circulating that when the alarm sounded in Japan, obviously people panicked because the missile was over Japan. That's ABC News. Washington Post reporting, headline, North Korean missile flies over Japan, escalating tensions and prompting an angry response from Tokyo. North Korea launched a ballistic missile Tuesday morning that flew over the northern Japanese island of, not going to even try to pronounce it. Public broadcaster NHK reported the government issued an alert for residents in some prefectures to take cover. Can you imagine? Although North Korea has sent a missile over Japan before, back in 1998, this launch comes at a time of heightened tensions. Pyongyang has threatened to fire a missile over Japan and into the waters around the American territory of Guam. I mean, if you contrast this is certainly more of an escalation. They're not going to stop. Yet, didn't I read about Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, essentially saying, hey, look, we're going to, even though he launched a missile last week, we're going to continue with the diplomatic push. And look, I'm not one of these guys that says war is a good thing in North Korea. Not at all. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people would die in that situation. However, what do you do? I mean, what do you do when this stuff continues? And what happens when one of these things falls and actually hits? Now, the Pentagon's saying, hey, look, North America was okay, not going to be affected. But still, this is certainly something that is continuing to escalate. There's no question. Now, to the execution date in Arkansas, November the 9th, Arkansas will execute, according to the governor's spokesperson, Jack Gordon Green is his name. That's Jack Gordon Green. That's from the press release. The Gazette did report that he did spare another. So Friday, he's scheduled one. Last Friday, Mr. Green, and the death warrant for Jack Gordon Green, the convicted killer of a Johnson County minister, set the date of execution for November 9th. And then shortly before noon, Hutchinson's office announced the governor's intent to grant clemency to Jason McGee, whose plea for life was viewed favorably by the parole board in the spring. McGee will serve life in prison without a chance of parole. Now, he was previously on death row, and I think he was one of the ones that his execution they had to hold up or something in court. Anyway, the telephone number, by the way, you can call or text us 24 hours a day. Leave a voicemail, give me a text message, whatever you want to do. That number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. And hang on one more second. Okay, yeah, can we finish up real quick with the Real ID Act and how ridiculous this is? I did not mean to say that I was not for safety of kids, but it's getting to the point. I mean, you don't have to have an ID to vote, but they're going to make you have new enhanced Real ID. You're going to have to comply. Arkansas is going to comply with other states, the new federal regulations and that sort of thing. What's more dangerous, though? Ask yourself that. What is actually more dangerous? Is fake voters more dangerous, or is a potential hijacker more dangerous? I mean, if we're talking about we got to have uniform IDs to protect us from ourselves so the TSA can better do their jobs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, terrorism is a real threat. If you look at the radical Islamic apologists in our government, who are in many ways are getting that way by voters. I mean, whether it's the politician himself or the person the politician is appointing. I mean, fake voters, you can make a strong case. Hey, that's a lot. I mean, maybe the same thing. Maybe very close to the same thing. I mean, think about this. They say that Real IDs are designed to improve national security, require names to match letter for letter across each piece of document. Okay, all right, I'll make a deal. If we comply with the Real ID Act, will we stop collecting all digital communications? I mean, well, if that makes us safer, will you stop collecting all? No, you're not going to stop collecting all. You're not going to stop doing that, are you? No, because the Fourth Amendment is for what we can submit and convict you in court. That's what the Fourth Amendment is for. You get high enough in that governmental apparatus, the ends justify the means. And I'm sorry, we got to have it all. You may commit a crime one day, we're going to store your information and use it against you. Or at least That's the fear, right? You know what I've realized? I mean, low-level politicians in positions of power, we're seeing this here in our own state, are manipulating their power. It's kind of a soft tyranny to get what they want. I mean, if you're talking about the National Security Agency or whatever else, and you're somebody who has this authority, I've said this for a very long time. The question is, why would you use this for gain or that for gain? We might see this in some of the reports about the deep state and Donald Trump. The real question is, with that kind of unchecked authority, why wouldn't you do it if you know anything about the human heart and human condition? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why government must be limited, because you're never going to eliminate corruption. Folks, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.